My name is Gavin Evans, and this is a review of the 2020 movie of The Witches. Now, if you haven't seen the original The Witches, I definitely recommend it. It's one of those movies I watch, and I'm just like, oh my god, if I saw this as a kid, I would have been scarred for life. Like, for a kid's movie, it is legitimately terrifying. And I'll get into that a bit more, but it is a really great kids movie from 1990. Can't recommend it enough. I love it. This original is complete shit. I'm not going to bury the lead. It's awful. It's atrocious. It's one of the worst movies I've watched in a very long time. That's not true. I watched the remake of Cinderella. It's still an absolutely awful movie in every single possible way, and let's get into why. First of all, let's talk about the cast. Angelica Houston is phenomenal in the original, and Anne Hathaway, I like her as an actress, but I didn't like what she was doing here. She is way too over the top. She's just hamming it up to such a degree that just takes you out of the movie entirely. It just feels like she's trying way too hard, and it's never effective at what the movie is trying to do. I didn't like the way she talked. I didn't like the way she carried herself on screen. I think this is a very bad, over-the-top performance from Anne Hathaway. Chris Rock is also in this movie for a little bit, even though you don't see him, it's just a voiceover. But from the second this movie began, when he's talking in his Chris Rock way of, "Oh, those witches, and they're real," I was just like, oh, okay, simmer it down, Chris Rock. You're too loud here. I loved Chris Rock in the new Saw movie Spiral because I thought that he added life and personality to a franchise that needed exactly that in its cast. But here, he's just too much. Yeah, his performance was way too over the top. Stanley Tucci, I think he had potential. He plays the role of Mr. Stingo that was played by Warren Atkinson in the original. And I think Stanley Tucci is a bright spot in the movie, but that said, he's in it for maybe 5 minutes. He's very underused. He's not in the movie as much as he could have been, so I can't say that he does a good job because he just doesn't leave you with any kind of impact. Octavia Spencer was miscast. For someone who plays a grandma in this movie, I know Octavia Spencer's like 51. She just isn't a grandma, and she just doesn't feel like a grandma in the movie because the entire movie is supposed to be a story between a grandma and her grandson. And at no point did I feel like it was a grandma and her grandson. I feel like it could have easily been a mom and her kid. So, especially when you get later on into the movie and what the movie's trying to do, it actually is very important for her to feel like a grandma. And I just don't think Octavia Spencer feels like that. I don't think she's bad in the movie. I just feel like she was completely miscast. The rest of the cast, the kids, I guess they're fine. They don't do anything special, but they're far away from the worst part of this movie. When I heard Robert Zemeckis was going to be directing this, I actually thought that was a good sign. I loved Robert Zemeckis as a director. Like, if you look at his movies in the 80s and 90s and even the early 2000s, you've got What Lies Beneath, Castaway, you got Forrest Gump, Back to the Future 1, 2, and 3. All great movies. I'll die on that hill. Death Becomes Her. If you haven't seen Death Becomes Her, it is a fantastic movie. Definitely watch it. So I thought Robert Zemeckis was going to be a really good pick for this movie. But he's not. I don't know what happened to him, because ever since that period of time, he's done The Walk, which I freaking love. Super underrated movie. And he did Flight, which is actually a really good movie too. But all his other movies like The Polar Express, Beowulf, Christmas Carol, Welcome to Marwen, it's just not the same Robert Zemeckis I used to love. And that's definitely the case here. I just don't think he does a good job directing this movie. Visually, story-wise, just everything about this movie falls flat in every single possible way. But to really get into what I don't like about this movie, I have to compare it to the original. For example, the original has this moment in the beginning of the movie where we hear about how a witch curses a kid, and the kid gets stuck in a painting, living his entire life in this painting. That is a terrifying idea. But instead of that terrifying and traumatizing idea in this movie, we get this other story of a witch who turns a kid into a chicken. And you just can't help but look at it and be like, well, that's a little goofy. And it just doesn't have anywhere near the same impact. In the original The Witches, we get truly terrifying and gross looking The Witches. Like, just look at this.
Hold it. You grab this. Good. No.
The warts, the long noses, the long fingers, just everything about it is unnerving and uncomfortable to look at. And I love the camera angles of them zooming in and all that. But what we get here, instead of those truly terrifying looking witches, we get this. We get women who have their hands like they're doing the live long and prosper sign from Star Trek that I can't seem to do. They're barred, they have one toe. They're just not at all scary. Like, you just look at them and you're just like, oh, they look really goofy compared to those other witches. In the original, we get this great scene of the main kid turning into a mouse. And just look at this.
We are having instantaneous action.
And in this remake, we get this. One is creative and looks really great and holds up and just totally works, and the other one just looks like a CGI mess. There's a scene where the main witch is like stretching out her arms, and she does this a few different times, and the CGI is absolutely atrocious in this movie. Like, I just look at it and I'm just like, who thought this was a good idea? Like, I can't wrap my head around that someone watched this movie and thought, oh yes, this will do. The CGI doesn't hold up, and this movie is only a year old. And if I saw it a year ago, it still wouldn't hold up. It looks awful. It looks dumb. It looks goofy. The original used interesting camera angles. It used practical effects and makeup, and all that stuff holds up still to this day. I can still watch that movie and be terrified by it. And I watch this movie and I'm just like, is this meant to be scary or funny? Because it's too stupid and not funny to be funny, and it's too goofy and silly looking to be scary. And then the movie just completely falls flat. I believe that Guillermo del Toro wrote this movie. I think Alfonso Cuarón might have also had a hand in this movie, I think I heard. And that just baffles me. Like, there's so much talent behind this movie, and for it to be as bad as it is just awful. I will say one element of the original movie that I didn't really like is that for a movie that was so dark, I think it ended on a false feel-good note that never really worked for me. And I guess that also the book, Warhead Dahl, or whatever his name is, didn't like that ending because it didn't follow his book ending. And when you watch this movie, it follows the book ending closer, but it just doesn't belong. I feel like, knowing the tone of the original movie, that should have had the dark and depressing ending. But this movie is bright. It's meant to be this very fast-paced, funny movie. And then it has the technical, dark and depressing ending. But instead of it being dark and depressing, it plays it in like a feel-good note kind of way. I just don't get what they were going for with the ending. If I ever want to see this story again, I'll just watch the original because that one holds up incredibly well with great effects, great writing. It's got unique and interesting camera work behind it, and it's truly a terrifying movie. While this movie just is just a bad version of all those good things about the original. There's nothing about this movie that's different enough for it to stand out. And then everything that it does is just a bad attempt at what the original did successfully. Like, I actually can't think of a reason to ever watch this movie again. It's not funny, it's not scary, it doesn't got an interesting vision behind it. The cast is really bad. It's an hour and 50 minutes, I think, but it felt really long. Just nothing about this movie worked for me in any way. I absolutely hated it. Look, watch the original. It's fantastic. Just skip this one. So I'm going to go ahead and give the 2020 movie, The Witches, a 1 out of 10. I really think it's that bad. I absolutely hated this movie. There was no reason to ever watch it. But, did you watch it? If so, let me know what you thought about it in the comments down below. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon, and Kevin out.